In this video, I want to walk you through the instructions for the final project, part 1. So this intersession class that I'm making this for is taking place in the spring of 2022. So you'll notice the date, January 2nd. That's for this class. Future classes that use these instructions, the instructions will be the same. The date will be different. Just wanted to point that out. Hopefully you know how to find the final project instructions. Go to coursework content. That will bring you to this kind of table of contents section where you'll see the learning modules for our course. As you scroll down, you'll find the final project between Unit 3 and Unit 4. That's where we currently are. So in the intersession, both Sundays of the class are dedicated to working on these two parts of the final project. Both of them will require you to write a 275 word maximum, so no longer than 275 word article. This one will be about the Pueblo Revolt, as if you were a journalist present at the time. And of course, we're using our historical imagination here because journalists per se weren't a thing in the same way that they are now in 1680. So again, using some historical imagination, thinking about yourself as if you were from the Tarahumara or Raramuri people. They're native people that live in the Sierra Madres in Chihuahua, just to the south here. And so imagining as if you were one of them coming to the Puebloan world or the New Mexico colony along the Rio Grande, because you've heard that something is happening here and you want to see what's going on. And so you happen to be here to witness the Pueblo Revolt in August of 1680. So in a nutshell, that's sort of the scenario that we're setting up. As we look at the instructions, you'll see what sources you'll use and so on for this assignment. This is, again, the first part of this. For the last Sunday of our class, you'll do part 2 of the final project, which will be another 275 word maximum historical journalism assignment, except this time you will be looking at women's suffrage in New Mexico. So it'll be a different topic and slightly different source requirements. So you'll see what that looks like then. To see the instructions for the historical journalism project, you'll click here. Just click into the module as you do with the others. I will post this video first in the module. So once I've made this, that is what will appear first, and then the instructions second. Do remember, you can also get a link to the instructions from the syllabus. So if you open the syllabus and scroll down to the paragraph that talks about the final project, these instructions will be there as well. I'm going to click on this to open it, but because I know that sometimes my internet can get a little bit laggy when I'm making videos, I'm going to let this thing load, and I'm going to open this new tab where I already have the assignment instructions up. So this is the same thing that's opening over here in Brightspace. All right, so to talk about this a little bit then, you can read the specific instructions as I've written them out. But what we're focusing on is integrating and interpreting historical evidence to write an article, a concise and to the point article about a major event in New Mexico history. And so those are the things you want to be thinking about. How have I integrated the source materials? How have I interpreted them? And how have I told the story? Because 275 words is not very long. And as you read newspaper articles, sometimes, they have to be short and to the point. And so that's what we're working on here. Hopefully some of the skills that we've been building with the reading tweets assignments, whether you're doing that on Twitter or on Hypothesis or on the discussion board, have helped to work on this skill of writing concisely. All right, so right here I have 4 steps to follow to complete this assignment. So first, you'll read the scenario below. I've described it in a nutshell in the video here, and make sure you understand what this scenario is. Second, you will choose one of the primary sources that are provided below the scenario, and you will locate doing an internet search. You can use CNM libraries, you can use Google Scholar, as long as you use the SIFT method that we've been working with to vet your source for credibility and relevance. You're going to locate one additional secondary source. So you can use the textbook. I have a link to the section, the relevant section of the textbook below, and you need to find one additional secondary source. So in short, you'll be using 3 sources: one primary source, one secondary source that you've located, and the second secondary source is the textbook. Read and take notes on the documents and materials that you've located and chosen, and do that in the context of the scenario. So reread these things. Some of them you'll be reading for the first time, but the textbook you'll reread, thinking about the scenario that you've been given. How can I integrate this information into a short article as if I was a reporter present? And then, of course, use your notes to write this 250 to 275 word report that integrates the 3 sources and interprets the significance of the events you've studied. So you don't want to just say this is what happened, but you also want to say why it's important. And that's something historians work on with the historical thinking process. That's what we mean when we say interpretation, right? You want to tell us not just here's some things that happened, but here's why it matters. All right, so you can read through the scenario. Again, I have kind of explained it in general terms as I've talked through this. And then here's the link I mentioned to the relevant section of the textbook. You will write your article in a Word document or similar, whatever you've been doing for the timeline assignments, and submit it in Brightspace. I'm thinking going ahead, I might try to do this in a format like Medium, where we could all post like to a publication, a newspaper, and read each other's work. But this time around, and especially because we're in intersession, I don't want to add another layer of something else for you to figure out because we've done enough of that. So just go ahead and do the straightforward, write it in a Word document and submit it to Brightspace. Be sure to list the sources you've used at the bottom of your article. So, for example, if you use the account of the Indian Juan, as he was called in the interrogation, so this one here, if you use that one, you can just copy this as the bibliographical entry. You'll want to mention that you used which sections, I should say, of the textbook that you used, because you're not just limited to the section on the first American Revolution. Of course, the sections preceding and following that one also have much to do with the Pueblo Revolt. So list those, and then list all of the relevant publication information, including a link for the secondary source you found. So all of that will come at the end, like a works cited kind of section after your newspaper article. Here are the primary sources to choose from. You should look through them, kind of understand what they are. If you have questions, ask me. I'm happy to help with that in terms of kind of contextualizing some of this. We do have 2 different Pueblo perspectives. These were both taken during Spanish interrogations in 1681, when the Spaniards returned with Governor Otermin, who was trying to do a reconquest then but failed. They spoke to, and of course you can imagine, it's like the Inquisition a little bit, interrogating Pueblo people who had either participated in or were present for, in some way, shape, or form, the revolt of 1680 of the previous year. So we have to kind of read between the lines here to get the Pueblo perspective, because they're answering questions that the Spaniards are putting to them. That's both of these first 2 come from that context. This one here from Albert Java, I won't try to pronounce his Hopi name because I don't know the pronunciation of Hopi. Unfortunately, it's something I need to learn. This is a oral history account of the Pueblo the Pueblo Revolt against the Spanish from First Mesa among the Hopis. So, they, of course, were also involved in this regional kind of uprising against the Spaniards. And so this is an oral history account, and it helps us think about how oral traditions are also primary sources. And then lastly, we have the letter of Governor Otermin, in which he's trying to explain what happened just within a few weeks after the revolt. So you choose one of these to use. Of course, you can kind of, your ideas can be informed by all of them that you read, but focus on one and think about how it relates to the secondary sources that you're using. I've given you a timeline here just as an aid to help think about kind of what happened in terms of Spanish colonization in the 17th century and then the Pueblo Revolt at the end of that century. And finally, here are some notes and tips. So please read through these and think about them. Consider your audience, practice concise writing, as I've mentioned. Consider the limitations of the sources. I've given you some context, but of course, as we've talked about, the historical record is incomplete. Even at best, when we can have the most sources that we can possibly find, there are still going to be gaps and silences. So do think about that. Also, review the primary and secondary sources section, and I've given you a link to the SIFT method as well. So you can think about how to work through these sources. And here is the rubric. I know it's small, you can zoom in on it, but you can also click this link and it will open up in a Dropbox format so that you can zoom in on it better and read through it. But what we're thinking about is problem setting. So what is the issue, the problem you're describing? Evidence acquisition, that's how well you evaluated that secondary source. Evidence evaluation, how well did you evaluate and integrate the evidence from the sources into your article? And then your conclusion, your reasoning. How did you explain? Do you have sound reasoning for your explanation of the evidence and the conclusions you draw from it? So that's essentially that rubric in a nutshell. All right. Hopefully that's helpful in walking through what this assignment is and how it works. Please, again, let me know what questions you have as you go. I'm happy to help, and I will talk to you soon.